Welcome back to the Ingredients for Success podcast. I'm Andrew Rice.
And I'm Jackie Rizzo.
If you enjoy the podcast today, be sure to go to iTunes and YouTube and rate the show as well as subscribe. On today's show, we have Afif Ghannoum, who is the CEO and co-founder of BIOHM. Afif is a biotech lawyer, and he is was a contributor to Forbes, as well as has spent a career taking scientific innovations and turning them into innovative companies, products, and testing services. So I'm pretty stoked to talk to Afif today.
I am as well. Yeah.
Okay.
But before we get started, can I ask something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please do.
Okay. So I'm super curious about the artwork behind you. From my understanding, it has to do with like your family adventures. Is that correct?
Yeah. So a buddy of mine is just this awesome artist, and he did this all with a Bic pen. So it's the idea was that's my dad on this side. Oh, I keep messing up in the camera. On that side, and then that's me, and it's my son and our office manager in a guacamole eating contest. So the idea is, we always try and keep it light, and no matter what, just have a good time. But yeah, it's a pretty amazing, talented guy,
I would say so if that's with a big pen. Now, is that in your house or is it in the office?
This is in the office.
In the office, okay. Now, do you have one in your house, or did I read that somewhere?
Yeah, so I have a mural. So he's done a bunch of drawings for me. He did one of our whole family going to space, another one of my son and I hunting sea monsters. So, my idea is basically over, the kids being little, anything they think would be awesome, that once a year I get my buddy Jimbo, who's the artist, to bring, one of these things to life so that down the road they'll have a whole bunch of these. And he's really just an amazing artist.
So, Afif, tell us a little bit about, being a contributor for Forbes. There was a few of your articles. We did thoroughly enjoy your articles. We are big fans of technical writing or just writing in general with a little bit of humor, because at the end of the day, we all
need some humor.
That's right. We all just need a little bit of humor. So we really enjoyed your articles. There was one article that you were talking about an agency pitching you, and I come from the agency world too, so I can put myself in that situation with you as a customer, potential client. And there was this part in here. It said they were super aggressive, telling me that the other PR firms that I don't know you're likely talking to, am I right, were losers, because they're like, I feel like that happens so much. They just like dog the competition like before they say anything. And typically though, that turns me off. I'm like, okay, you've already dogged so. And then kill if I have to in order to get your story blank everywhere. I'm just like, that had to have been a pretty interesting meeting.
Yeah, like and again, you come out of the agency world. The problem is it's very difficult to know how good agencies are off of case studies. And, I more and more, I say this, like, you're not going to know till you're in the mix. So for me, I always hate that when someone's like super aggressive. I'm all for putting yourself out there and saying we can do a great job, but there's a way to do it. So I don't know, on the agency side anymore, I'm very careful that, I'm willing to give a lot of people a try, but I've got to have an easy out, because otherwise it gets too tricky.
Well, you get at the beginning of those, it's like every relationship, right? You at the beginning of this relationship, you really don't know where it's going. You're hopeful, right? You hope it's going to go well, and you really hope that all those acronyms and all the things that they are talking and saying are going to actually come through, right? Mm-hmm. And not just come through, because I think that there's still half of the agencies out there that are, this sounds terrible, but collecting a check, right? It's about the money, not near as much about the results for their customers. I could go on and on about this forever, but you're right. Like, I so see that with the agencies, and just like you don't know what you're going to get when you start with an agency. So it's super smart to do some sort of short retainer or short burst of work so they can prove themselves.
Yeah, Look, PR wise, I've hired everyone from like Lodi Madison's Avenue firms to, sort of the hot wellness firms in LA. My dad had a best-selling book. We had a specific PR firm for them. And, kind of what I found with PR firms is they all have maybe like 3 to 6 hot contacts. Like they do have good relationships at a bunch of publications, but beyond that, they're cold reaching out like you would be. So for me, I've had the best results when I'm dealing with a PR firm that actually has a ton of hustle, and they just kind of figure out, like we had one PR firm who we actually still work with, Blaze PR. They were really trying to get us in TechCrunch, really talking about our microbiome data. And this one reporter was kind of blowing them off, and he ended up, the PR firm ended up sending the reporter like 24 frozen, Disney Frozen themed flowers, just like over the top cheesy, and said, I know this is over the top, but just give me 10 minutes, right? And it kind of broke through the ice, and I was like, that's kind of what it takes, like someone who's willing to take it, the next step, as opposed to, I sent a bunch of emails and really got much response, so.
Yeah, going that extra mile. And I think too, when you get in those, like your gut feeling on that meeting we're just talking about probably was like, oh man, I'm not really sure about these guys. And so I think so much of it too, like is like in life too, when you start these business relationships, it's about personality. Like I pretty much know, okay, I'm gonna be able to have coffee with that guy, or I'm not gonna be able to sit in the same coffee shop as that person, right? Like, so the same thing goes in these meetings. It's just like, okay, well, this is gonna work out. And you're probably going to be pretty close to right on whatever that assumption is. So I think we all, at our ages, we're still very youthful.
We're very young.
Right? Very young. I still think we probably know, who we can jive with and who we can't maybe.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I would call that wisdom. So Afif, in one of your articles, you talked about you were going to, I think it was Blaze that you were flying out to, and you had just your carry-on. And during that trip, you saw a unicorn and you were like, that's the mascot. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? Like, is it still in existence? Didn't you have to like take it back on the plane, like carry it on with you? And it's not like a little unicorn head, right? It's massive.
Oh, okay. I thought I was gonna have to go tell my daughter that I was wrong. Unicorns are real. So this was not a real unicorn.
No.
Okay.
Did I say that?
No.
But it was a big unicorn head. Can you tell us just a little bit about why did you decide that this unicorn is going to be the mascot? Or did you just need like a little bit of fun after that visit?
Yeah, so Blaze is located in basically downtown Santa Monica. So they have all sorts of like, tourist shops and just kind of, urban outfitter type places. And I saw this full unicorn mascot outfit, and I don't know, I think it was like, it had a clearance sign on it or something. So I was like, I'll get it. But I hadn't really thought through how to get it back. So yeah, I had to carry this like full mascot head under my arm. Like it was a whole thing. But yeah, we still have it. My kids, still have it on. We have a whole collection of like mascot heads, just kind of like a funny family thing to do. But yeah, it's like one of those things like, my wife is like, what are you doing? But it made the trip back.
I love that. And did you FaceTime? Am I remembering this correct from the article? You FaceTimed your kid, but your son was little.
Right? Yeah, he was only like 2 or 3 at the time, and he was totally baffled by what was going on. So I think in the article, I even put a picture of him at the end with it on. Yeah, it's that was fun. Forbes was, when I approached them, I basically said, listen, it's real science, and I'll kind of give your readers a front row to like what it takes to actually get something like this off the ground. And I think I wrote a dozen articles, for them. And, it was a big effort. Like every one of those articles, I want to say it was a couple thousand words. And, literally just like this, like people to this day read those, and it really kind of gives a flavor of what kind of goes into it, working with your dad, like making the slogs. Like, I don't know if you read the article about going on Spirit Airlines. Like, it's just when you're trying to get it done, you just figure it out, In fact, my favorite article I wrote was the day after because we started making the product in 2016, and I was flying down to Georgia the day after the election in 2016, and it was such a crazy night that just on a whim, I was flying out with my dad, and I bought everyone on the plane a drink. And it was just one of those moments. Like I literally still have notes from people who were like, "Oh, thanks for the sentiment." So it was fun, And then we went down, met with this manufacturer in Georgia, still, one of the manufacturers we work with, and it's just one of those. It was fun to have a record of that journey,
Yeah, that is great. Now, this is the trip that you went on to start the influencer program. Isn't this kind of what sparked that?
Yeah, so the influencer programs, we do a lot with influencers, and it sort of took a couple waves. At first, we were, trying to work with agencies, trying to find one influencer that had relationships with a bunch of others. And what we ended up finding was that we had the most success when I had a couple people in the office that they just started making laundry lists of people on Instagram, and they would just reach out. And what we found was it wasn't always the bigger the audience, the better the outcome. Sometimes there was no correlation at all. So what we started reaching out to people, 5,000, 10,000 followers, and it was pretty simple. We reach out Instagram, hey, love your page. We have all these microbiome-based products, a lot of science. Can we send you some samples? And we would do this hundreds and hundreds of people a week, right? And it just became math where we knew, X percent would, say, yeah, I would love to get samples of that. X percent would actually post something about the samples of that. X percent would sign up as an ambassador. And over that, we built up an ambassador program of thousands of people. And, a lot of people ask me, okay, well, how do you know if they're going to make you money, right? And that's kind of missing the point, right? Because if you try and do it and you think, okay, if, every one of these people that I send stuff to, I got to see how much they get in sales. And we will give them a discount code so that if they sell something, they'll actually get commission. So they are incentivized to actually sell things. But what we found was that almost the people we wouldn't expect would really do much had a really engaged audience who really trusted them and would buy. And ones that we thought, oh, this is a no-brainer, they're going to sell a ton of product, they wouldn't do anything because it turns out they're hawking tons and tons of products. It's very clear they're just very promotional. So we ended up, we have one ambassador where when we first started with her, she maybe generated a couple hundred in sales. And again, we give 15% commission, right? So you can do the math. We've cut her checks in a single month over $30,000. And it did not start out that way. We started, it was over a couple of years where just super enthusiastic, and her audience really trusted her. And at the same time, just by coincidence, we caught her as her wave of audience was growing. And, she's a super loyal part of, our clan where, she knows we're not just talking to her because she had a big audience at the time. Now all sorts of brands try and talk to her, and she knows they only want to deal with her because she's established now. But, we would have totally missed her if it wasn't for just treating every one of these people exactly the same. Because, I view it that, listen, at the worst, we're getting a person to try the product for themselves. The best, they're actually generating some sales, but we also get tons and tons of UGC, user-generated content, where people are saying how much they love the product, if they think it tastes good, all sorts of valuable content that we can repurpose. And some of our best performing ads are these ambassadors that maybe they don't actually sell a lot of product, but they clearly love the product. So yeah, it's a lot. There's no magic, there's no silver bullet for building it. It's a pure equation. I always tell people, you have to be sending out hundreds of these things, and it takes a while, but it will pay off.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Go ahead, Tina.
With your background being, as a biotech lawyer, how do you monitor what they say on social media? Because I would think that would be a little bit of a regulatory issue, or it could be. How do you deal with that?
So every person, we call them ambassadors. Every person who signs up as an ambassador has to sign an agreement. We lay out specifically what they can and cannot say. They have to include hashtags that they're or mention that they're sponsored. It's considered a sponsored or post or an advertisement. We literally lay out, you can talk about the product like this, you cannot talk about the product like this, because what the FTC and FDA as well, but this is really an FTC regulatory issue. You're responsible for what your ambassadors say, right? And especially when you're dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people, like, you can try your best, but sometimes people will say stuff and you can ask them to bring it down, and you only have so much control. So a lot of times what it's coming down to is, are you in good faith doing things to limit that, right? Because even the regulators are people too, right? So they if it passes the sniff test, that, listen, this is a company, they're not this is a good actor, they're trying to put in proper controls, and if someone says something and it sort of slips through the crack, well, okay, correct it, but that's not malicious, right? As opposed to, like, everybody's kind of seeing companies out there where people are going nuts, like they're saying wild things, there's really no controls.
Yeah.
If the regulators come talk to you then, and it's like, oh, well, I didn't tell them to say that, like that's where you're not going to get a good dialogue. So yeah, you're 100% right. It's that's why, like, building an influencer/ambassador program, it's a lot of work, but it really can pay off if you get it going well.
Mm-hmm.
So Afif, there was a few things that you had mentioned there when you were talking about the ambassador and influencer program that you have built up. So I think, like, some key takeaways I heard were just like, I think we've experienced this here at Stratum. Like, we have to do more volume, right? So, like, taking a couple at a time, and onesies and twosies, and, like, yeah, it works, but man, it's going to be so slow. It is so slow. And then so I think, like, volume, and yes, that means a lot more work, especially on the front end, but I do feel like I could see how that would totally pay off. The other things I heard were loyalty, right? Trust, and love the product. So I think from both ends, the ambassadors, I mean, tell me what you think about this, but from both ends, the ambassadors as well as the end customers have to have that loyalty to you, loyalty to their consumer, and the consumer then has to feel that loyalty from both them and the brand that they are pitching. Because, like you said, if it's an ambassador or an influencer and they're just they're just pitching everybody, people know that. They can see through that, and so to really grab the consumer loyalty. So anyway, I think loyalty and trust, and then loving the product at the end of the day. I just read something else again yesterday about just products in general. It's just like, yeah, you can do everything in the world, and you could have the best marketing and the greatest this and the greatest that. But if at the end of the day your product is like flavorless or tastes like whatever or doesn't work, then whatever. So they gotta love the product.
Yeah, that's table stakes. I think a lot of times people forget, because I do a ton of digital marketing, and I'm in these groups of just other e-commerce entrepreneurs, and once every probably month someone will gut check the group and be like, listen, you're not selling digital marketing. Digital marketing is a tool to sell your products. If your products are junk, it doesn't matter. There's no sort of hack or trick or like technique or tactic that's going to overcome the fact that you have a junky product, and it's the same, like you were saying, like, I listen to a ton of podcasts. You can tell when a host is doing like a read advertisement if they're just sort of picking up something and they're like, that's why I really recommend, and it's like, this is just an ad. And then others where, like, sometimes they'll go off script, and I was talking about, I listened to this comedian, his podcast, and he was pitching ButcherBox, and in the middle of it, he was saying the deal was something like, anybody who uses my code will get a 3 pound of ground beef with every order for life. And he literally caught himself because it's actually a really good deal. I don't even know how they're doing that. You could genuinely tell he thought it was a great deal, right? So that's a lot more authentic. Right. It's exactly the same with influencers and ambassadors. Like, we've done everything. We've been, we've done big articles with out, we've done everything from like literally NPR National 30-minute conversation to Goop doing a couple big articles on us to influencers. The most resonating ones are the ones where the audience can genuinely tell the person uses the product, right? Like they actually like it. They're seeing these people and they're oftentimes truly living what they're talking about. You know what I mean? And sometimes like everybody has this picture of sort of like the person, a woman in like a Lululemon model is going to be like the ideal influencer for this type of stuff. We've had actually some of the most successful words, people that they're trying to live a healthier lifestyle. They're trying to get in shape. They're trying to eat better. And that's sort of their message on social media. And their audience really trusts them. You know what I mean? Because they're like figuring it out along the way with their audience. And that resonates a lot more than someone who seems to be like unattainably, fit or like, just clearly never eats.
Unreal.
Yeah, it's not real. It's not relatable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's so true. It's so true. Like, nobody starts super fit, nobody, right? And so we all know that like this is the journey that people are on. And I think more and more people are drawn to that now as we've become, as a society, more, not just accepting, like we want that. We want real, right? We grew up on reality TV and like we want real. And
we
so,
do, yeah, we do. It reminds me, it kind of goes back to the Dove campaign, what you're saying. I feel like that was kind of the starter into, we don't need the unrealistic, expectation here, but we need the real. And that becomes beauty and that becomes what is more attractive.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that you saying that, especially about influencers.
Yeah. Well, even like our ads, our best performing ads are people who picked up their iPhone and shot a really honest review, and you're catching their eyes with like, this tastes really good. You know what I mean? Like we have a Super Greens products, Super Reds products that genuinely taste really good. And people, you can legitimately tell they think it tastes good. That's a big pain point for people with a lot of these superfood powders, that they know it's good for them, but they think it tastes bad, right? So if you're able to catch that like spark, that's better than any slick video or ad, So I think that's something that surprises a lot of people in e-commerce is that the more lo-fi videos and content, which is real, actually performs better because people trust that it's legitimate. It's not just a company putting a slick ad. So even like the Dove thing, that was like the early starting point of the authenticity. But those ladies were still models. There was still like a professionally shot ad. You know what I mean? So I think, you're starting to see it where it's, I launched a product 8 years ago in the oral care space. We were in 27,000 stores. We were in national TV ads, $100,000 production, all this stuff, right? The agencies we used then don't even exist now. You know what I mean? Because that's not what resonates with consumers anymore. It's really this user-generated content. It's quick eye-catching. It's really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really the agencies that understand maybe the user-generated content is more powerful than the content they're going to create. So they embody that as an agency, and they build their strategy on that, and all their customer strategy upon that foundation as well. So yeah, it's crazy to see that, and it's like you look at like what's real, and we like. 2020's been everybody's saying it's a dumpster fire. It was a dumpster fire. There was good parts of it, just like every year or whatever, but it's been tough for a lot of people out there. And so, and I think the whole video, I wish I could remember the guy's name, on the longboard with the ocean spray, right? Have you seen this, right? And like everybody has the same reaction because it's so real. This guy is so real. I think that is exactly why he just captivated everybody. He's just real. He's just chilling, longboard, 2020, whatever, but he's got his ocean spray, and he's just got, what was Fleetwood Mac playing in the background. It was the music, it was everything. It was just like, he was a real dude. Like, how many times you see, stereotypically see somebody on a longboard and drinking ocean spray and listening to Fleetwood Mac? Like, this is like, but people needed that. People right now needed something to lift their spirits.
Well, and what was smart was Ocean Spray leaned into it. Fleetwood Mac leaned into it. Like they now I don't know if you guys heard about the Sherwin-Williams thing a week or two ago. They had a young worker, like early 20s, that was making TikTok videos. He was a store employee, and he was making these TikTok videos about how to do different paint projects with Sherwin-Williams paint. He's getting millions and millions of views. They fired him. They said, you were using store paint to make these videos. And everybody in the industry is like, what are you doing? Like, you cannot pay for that type of engagement. And then every other big paint company in America offered him a job, and he ended up going with like a sort of a smaller one down in Florida. But it was like, you're going to see these companies that are dinosaurs that just do not understand the way things are going. And then you're going to see ones that lean into it, And so smaller companies like us, like, yeah, listen, it's part of it is what works, and you got to rely on performance marketing. And part of it is we're not buried in a 80-person marketing organization where there's 90 levels of approvals and all these things. So it's going to be interesting to see how it really shakes out,
Yeah, agreed.
Mm-hmm. That's true. It kind of reminds me of, have you seen the New Yorker, their recent cover? It's a lady just sitting there, and she's in Zoom, and everything is perfect, but it's saying something like, we don't have to be perfect, it's 2020. And all around her is just a filthy mess, and her cat's in a litter box. Have you seen that cover? That kind of just reminds me of what we're talking about here, just about just be real. And that to me was so relatable. I just saw it in passing, and I thought that's what people need. They need to know what is real, and they need to have the story behind it.
So good, so good. Well, Afif, we didn't talk a lot about BIOHM and your products and your company. We're going to do this again. I'm just glad we were able to have this ambassador influencer conversation with you. You've got a lot of experience in it. You've done it, quite frequently and very well. So it was great visiting with you about that. But I think we're going to have to wrap up here. But thanks for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, cool.
It was fun. Thanks, Afif.